over the top introduction, but yeah, some of them are the facts, like you said, like in how you met. That's the fact. Everything else is a little over the top, but I will accept it. Thank you everyone for having me here. I know I have a brief idea about the group of people right now showing on the screen. My understanding is that you are either kind of in the college or kind of coming out and maybe starting jobs and all, right? So you are at the stage of life when I met Gaur Kumar back in Albany. So that's like the similarities I see. So so what I want to do today is like I want to talk about practical spirituality. That's the topic today. So let me share my screen. And then we can jump into that. Okay, so I hope you can see my screen now.
We can see a screen, bro.
Let's see, I have to change this guy. Okay, so this is the screen. So the topic is practical spirituality, and the reason I chose this topic is that because I feel like, I mean, this is important for everyone, but especially the stage, you people are. I think it can have value to you, and obviously everyone can derive value from it. But I hope, like after the end of the class, you get something out of it which you can use to enhance your life. So before I jump in to the content, I just want to like do a quick prayers to Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of ISKCON, as you may know, and it's because of him that we are actually talking on this forum. I mean, his contribution is immense. If he didn't translate all those books from Sanskrit to English, I'm sure I won't be here right now talking about Bhagavad Gita to you guys. So for me personally and for everyone else who part of ISKCON, his contribution immense. So we just do like this 4-line prayer for him. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prashayine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschali Siddhamine. So the translation is like is there in English. So if anyone interested, they can take a look at that. And other thing which I would like to kind of request everyone is like to keep the videos on, so at least I feel I'm talking to people versus like bots. Else like I may end up falling asleep. So if possible, please keep your videos on so I feel like I'm alive. And in case you have any questions, you can either stop me while I'm talking, or you can wait till the end. Whatever works for you. I'm open, and I will take either way. So the point is to have interactive class. I want everyone to take at least one point at minimum from this conversation. And for me also it's learning experience because I had to kind of meditate on all the points I kind of created for this class. So I also got benefit out of that. So let's dig into that. So when we talk about spirituality, right, like the word spiritual gets like has a different meaning for different people. There are a lot of like imagery associated with spirituality and the word spiritual. Like these are some of the images which I kind of, excuse me, find funny because people have their own conception of what spirituality is. So if I have to define spirituality in the sense of a textbook definition, basically spirituality involves recognition of a feeling or sense or belief that there is something greater than myself, something more to being human than sensory experience. And all that, the greater whole of which is a part is a cosmic or divine nature. So this is like kind of a textbook definition of spirituality, but obviously it's much more than that. And it's also like, different, perspective for different people. Now, a lot of people these days, like to be called spiritual versus religious. There's a term out there, which people say like, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious, right? Because the thought is that religion makes you intolerant and spiritual is just openness out there. So somehow the word religion is kind of made it negative, from that perspective. And also the way we see the world right now, we see so much like strife and fights between different religions. People think that religions actually are causing all those things, right? And they are actually so close-minded. It makes people so close-minded that they are not open to other paths. So a Hindu may think Muslim in a certain way, Muslim may think of Hindu in a certain way. Same thing with Christianity and Judaism. Like they're not open to each other's path, right? Whereas spirituality defines more openness. So, for some people, spirituality means yoga. Like you sit on a mat, you have this like nice, uh, that like mineral water, from a specific brand, and that completes your look for a spiritual, person. Or you have like this like hippish lifestyle, and that's what spirituality is. That's how this is how people understand or misunderstand. They confuse spirituality, as a feel good factor. If you're feeling good, by doing something, that's very spiritual for that's how they define it. Which is true. I mean, spirituality does make you feel good, but it's not true all the time, right? So, for example, if drugs make you feel good for a certain time, right? Are drugs spiritual? Probably not. For me personally, I love samosas. So, I mean, they make me feel really good. When I take a bite of samosa with a chutney, like, date tamarind chutney, it just makes my whole soul go happy. But is that samosa spiritual? Probably not. I mean, I would argue with that, but no, it's not. So, so that's where, so basically, because we are at, if you have to define basically religion and spirituality, the way I would define is that the spirituality is a goal. So being in the spiritual consciousness is our goal, right? And to take that journey towards the goal, we need religion. So think of spirituality or spiritual consciousness as a destination, while religion is a means. So they are connected with each other. So religion gives us the process to become spiritual. So example, like we say that we are part and parcel of God, right? And by connecting with God or Krishna, we become happy. And chanting does that for us. So chanting is the process. So that becomes part of religion, right? The destination is the spiritual consciousness. So in in other words, a religion actually enables spirituality, or they should enable spirituality. So if the religion are taken, if all the religions around the world are taken in true sense or essence, they should lead people to be spiritual, where they are open to each other, thoughts and processes. They are open to each other religions. Like it should not make people close and hate each other, right? If that's going on, then they are people are not understanding the religion properly, and that's the prime problem where people think negative about religion because of the misunderstanding they have, the way it's kind of given to them. There's like few examples like of Shira Prabhupada and how he exemplified these kind of behavior. So he would always like when he would talk about Jesus Christ, he would talk with a lot of like respect and love and gratitude. Like he would call him like like a really good Vaishnav. And he had all the good stuff for Jesus Christ. And there's also a story when he went to Iran the first time, and he was giving a class, and there was this like azan from a mosque in Iran. He kind of stopped, and he just like got immersed in that, for a few minutes in that azan. And then after it was done, he was like, wow, isn't it so nice? And then his disciples were like, oh, why are you saying it's nice? I thought you want to convert them. He's like, no, if you think that I'm here to convert people, then you are misunderstood. So basically, so same thing is bhakti path. So we choose bhakti path to attain that spirituality, right? So bhakti path recognizes that there are other different paths which exist to attain that spiritual consciousness. We are not like closing all the paths for everyone. So that's what like the aspect of bhakti yoga is, which I think is pretty appealing, personally, to me. So we'll talk about like few aspects of spirituality and practical spirituality, right? So if you think about word practical, what is mean is that how do we apply a certain thing to enhance our life, right? So we have knowledge and we want to use the knowledge to enhance our life, right? So we have spiritual knowledge. Now how do we apply it so that we become better as a person, we become happier, we become like more productive as a member of society, and so so on and so forth, right? So that's what practical spirituality means. How do I take what I have and apply it and make the best out of it? Like it's like optimizing my knowledge about that. So So we talk about like this they say kala patra a lot, which basically means like time, place, and circumstances, right? So one of the aspect is of the practical aspect of spirituality, like how do we apply the teachings, right? And the teachings are applied in accordance with time, place, and circumstance, and that's very important because so many times, like we and there are the philosophies and religion which have that, which kind of suffer from a limitation where they had they had basically the injunctions from 1,000 years ago, but they still try to apply them as it is, in both practice and principle, right? And then it's become like kind of a close to fanatism, right? So that's where our acharyas have kind of shown the path that how we take the teachings which are thousands and million years old and apply based on time, place, and circumstance, which is kala, deshe, kala, patra. And Prabhupada has been, is a great example of this, right? I mean, if you look at what he did, to us, I mean, it just shows how flexible he was. His teachings have been is universal because he was very, very specific with each specific person because he would give guidance, on their need, but at the same time he had, universal teaching which could apply to everyone. At the same time, he would customize it for his, individual followers because he knew the principle of time, place, and circumstance. And same thing with us. Like when we apply the teaching in this age, we follow that time, place, and circumstance because the principles remain same, but the application may differ, and that's the key aspect. And Prabhupada kind of showed this by, in so many ways he kind of gave that, like behavior to us. So one of the key things was that, like when Prabhupada was, initiated, like, and his Guru Maharaj asked him, in those days, like 64 rounds were the norm, right? But Prabhupada, when he came to West, like he knew 64 rounds would be a long, time in a day. So he made 16 rounds for that, right? I mean, he was flexible. He would adjust himself in every situation. Like when he came to US, like, he was fairly new. He was staying with this Indian couple, Indian and non-Indian couple who would make cook meat in the kitchen. But he didn't show any, like, hatred for them, or he didn't like kind of try to impose himself. He just like did his thing. He would cook his meals and he would do his thing, right? He was very flexible. He adjusted because of the time, place, and circumstance, right? And that's what, like, he made, and those are those some things which he kind of carried for rest of his life, around ISKCON, as part of ISKCON. There's one example where, one of those hippies came to him and he's like, oh, can you explain to me what Vaikuntha is, right? So Prabhupada, he knew, like, if I give like a textbook definition of Vaikuntha to this hippie, he will not know or understand, right? If he acts like a charya or a scholar in Sanskrit and talks about Vaikuntha in terms of like spiritual energy, in terms of like, how everything is like so beautiful there, and there's like unlimited food and there's a party of the trees and stuff like that. If he talks about that, this hippie will not get it, right? So what he does, he kind of tells him in a language he understands. So he tells him that Vaikuntha is like ocean of LSD, and that hippie just got it, right? Like, and he, so, but if you think about, like, if you think from a very traditional perspective, people would say, look down upon Prabhupada, saying, how can he say that? How can he compare like a pure Vaikuntha to like something like LSD, right? It's like almost blasphemous. But he didn't see that way. He didn't see, for him, like the goal was, the practicality was the key to, so he wanted people to use this teaching, right? Not just to listen and just like say, oh, I can't do it, and just move away, right? And that's where that's what he showed, like in every aspect of his teaching, like practicality, like how do we use it, how do we apply to our day-to-day life, how do we enrich our lives with that, how do we become better person, better husband, better daughter, better father, better mother, better co-worker. Like, he kind of showed that to us by just like this tiny little things where he applied those very common sense and basic, examples, to explain this. And also, like, there's I mean, there's a lot of stories I can talk about that, but that's, I don't want to get into that. But one of the things that I want to share with you is that, there's this book I'm reading right now, or I was reading. It's called 5 Years, 11 Months by Vishaka Dasi. She is like a disciple of Prabhupada. So there's this, like, passage from the book which I will read as it is to you. So Guru Das was one of those early disciples of Prabhupada. He was trying to catch up with Prabhupada during his morning walk, and he was barefooted. And while he was trying to run to Prabhupada, like he was hobbling over the rocks because he was barefooted. He could not take the pain. And Prabhupada asked him, "What is he doing?" And he said that I'm doing this for the sake of austerity. And Prabhupada was like, "What?" And his reply will surprise you. And Prabhupada answered him like, not like, oh, he could have said, "Oh, you are so amazing, you are putting your body to like pain so you can understand the austerity, you can understand that I'm not in the body, I'm the soul, you are doing such an awesome thing." But instead he actually chastised him. He told him that why don't he take more austerity by cutting his throat. Imagine that statement, right? And then he said that austerity does not mean to take unnecessary pain on the body, but it is tool for spiritual advancement. And you could do the same thing, same austerity while chanting by controlling your mind is also a form of austerity, and you make spiritual advancement, right? So the reason I'm saying is that a lot of people try to confuse austerity with bhakti and renunciation and spiritual advancement, but it's not. And Prabhupada was very clear on that. He's like, you don't have to, give pain to your body. Like, the goal is not austerity. The goal is service, right? And that's sort of the key aspect, right? We should not like try to like punish ourselves or try to be hard on ourselves because we are not able to do certain things, where we should try to find the best possible us who can do that, right? And that's what practicality is. And that's how we kind of learn and succeed in this path. There's also example Bhakti Tirath Maharaj, who was a very exemplary disciple of Prabhupada and who did like amazing preaching, and his preaching methods were very radical for those days, and a lot of criticism went after him, and people were like, oh, how can he do that? But the kind of people he connected to ISKCON and Krishna, they could not have come any other way. No way they could have been attracted to ISKCON and Krishna bhakti. So that's why it's important to have that flexibility, for people who are teaching and also people who are listening, because without that flexibility and the time, places, circumstances, you can't really like achieve the best out of that. Um, but one thing I do want to underline here is that while practicality is important, it should not be confused by it should not be confused like by bending of principles on a slight excuse. So we should not have we should not use flexibility as like compromising the core principle, like for example the regulator principles, right? There's no flexibility there. Those principles are core, but how do we approach it, how do we approach other aspects of spirituality, is where the flexibility is important, right? And I will share example with you guys that about that aspect, where I have one of my friend, like I met him like we go back to college like 20 years ago when I was in India. I met him like 6 years ago. He was in the US, and I met him, and we were talking, and he said that he has a guru and he's also spiritual. So I was just kind of exchanging notes with him, and I'm like, "Are you vegetarian?" He's like, "Yeah, I am vegetarian, kind of." I'm like, so he had it kind of at the end. I'm like, what do you mean kind of? It's like, well, my guru has said that, you should be a vegetarian, but if you are in a situation where, somebody's giving you meat, then you can take it. I'm like, what? What? He's like, yeah, he said to be flexible. I'm like, what is this flexibility about? So, I mean, if you are in the situation where you are given meat, like, why would you take it? Because there are other options too. He's like, yeah, but that's what my guru said. So this is what I want to like emphasize, that flexibility, practicality should not be confused by bending of rules. Practicality just means that we have a knowledge which is so precious and so rich, and how do we apply it to to enrich our life, not like how do we bend it to suit our whims and fancies. So that's something which I want to be clear, and I know people do get confused and they misuse that aspect of practicality and twist the rules here. Um, so we talked about like flexibility, and there are actually there are two things which I want to kind of lay it out here. There's fidelity and there's flexibility. We talked about flexibility in the context of practicality, but there's fidelity, which is a new term which I'm introducing now in this class. But this is term is like made very famous by Chaitanya Prabhu. His classes are amazing. I'm a big follower of his classes. If people don't know about him, please YouTube him. His classes are amazing. You will get so much enrichment from his classes. So he talks about these two things, fidelity and flexibility. So the way he defines them is that fidelity connects us with the past. So fidelity connects the present with the past, and the flexibility connects the present with the future. And that's why these two terms have to be in like a proper balance. So if in culture where there's high fidelity but low flexibility, then that culture becomes like a relic, right? Because there's no flexibility, it's only fidelity. So there's very few people who can take that culture. The culture will not grow, so it becomes like a relic in the museum. So it's not a living culture. The opposite side of the spectrum is where you see cultures disappear because they become so flexible, right? That they compromise on their core principles. So there's no fidelity, and there is a lot of flexibility. What happens then? It becomes a fad, right? So that's the other extreme. So we have to kind of keep those fidelity and flexibility in a right balance, so we can have the culture, we can have the principle, at the same time we can apply them in the contemporary situation. And if you think about like Sanatana Dharma, how it kind of evolved over centuries with all the invasions and everything else, it kind of followed the path, right? It retained the fidelity of it. That's why it was not like it didn't go extinct like other religions became extinct when Islam was kind of like strongly getting and occupying the world. Like religion like Zoroastrianism, which was like the key religion in Iran, for example, it almost vanished, right? Why? Because they were not able to be flexible, and they were trying to retain the fidelity, right? Whereas Sanatana Dharma was able to survive because it kept the core principles, but at the same time it showed flexibility, right? So I think that balance is pretty important. And from a perspective of maturity of an organization or an individual, I think the flexibility is an indicator of how mature an organization is, or how mature or how mature an individual is. And I will give you example, a very good example. Like when I was a neophyte back in Albany, I came to Krishna consciousness. I was like so rigid, like I was so strict. And when I think back about it now, I feel like so ashamed of myself, because in the process of my rigidity and my fanatism, I offended like so many people who are close to me. I would disrespect demigods. I would go to somebody's house and I would refuse to bow down to the demigods in the altar, because I felt that Krishna is the supreme. I should not bow down to anyone else. And in the process, I would like hurt those sentiments from those people, even my close like cousins and family. I ended up kind of hurting the sentiments. So so now I think back, I realize that how important flexibility is, how important is to understand how to apply these values and this knowledge. And again, the goal of this whole talk is like, how do we make this knowledge like more applicable and to us and our surroundings, right? So flexibility is actually a sign of maturity. If we keep extreme opinions, that's kind of lack, then it shows lack of flexibility. And again, it's nothing wrong in having extreme opinions. There's sometimes like having those opinions are important, but in general, having flexibility is a sign of maturity. And the other thing we should also remember is that bhakti is not a binary logic, right? It's not like it's a full spectrum. It's not you are a devotee or you're not. It's not like that. It's a full spectrum. There are people at different stages, right? Like, I mean, there are people who are much ahead than me right now in the stage of bhakti. There are people who maybe I am ahead of them in bhakti, right? So it's a whole journey, right? And this journey spans like multiple lifetimes, multiple years. And who are we to judge, like, that, I'm better than anyone else, right? So that thought is also kind of important for kind of our spiritual advancement. And and Prabhupada again is a great example, right? He knew like some people would like do 16 rounds, right? And they would commit themselves to the mission, but he knew some people will not, right? So he started this life membership where people could connect to his con, but not in a strict fashion that they cannot follow those principles. So that way they could feel happy that they are contributing to ISKCON through money or through donation, but at the same time they get slowly get like knowledge, and they get progress into the ladder of bhakti. So and also, right, like different people have different ways to connect to Krishna. Some people connect through chanting, some like philosophy, right? Some like deities worship, right? Some like cooking, some like eating prasadam, right? So there's different level of bhakti and different ways of bhakti, which Krishna provides, for us to progress. And it's interesting, right? We sometimes we have a tendency of like trying to see devotees as a binary, where we say he's a good devotee, he's not a good devotee. But Krishna himself does not do the distinction. So if you look at chapter 12 verses, chapter 12 verses from chapter 8, so chapter 12 verse 8 to 11, if you read them, Krishna actually lays out the whole spectrum. So Krishna starts that chapter 12 verse 8 as saying that that you should well, let me find the example here. I think I missed the example. Yeah, so basically he says that if you can't if you so yeah, he's like, so absorb your mind to me, right? So that's the first thing he says, like, absorb your mind to me. That's 12.8. Then he says that if you can't absorb your mind in me, then fix your mind in me, right? Then he says, okay, if you, and next verse is like, if you can't fix your mind, then do some service. And the next verse he said, if you can't do some service, then offers fruit of what you do to me. If you can't even do that, that's the next verse, then offer the fruits to some good cause, right? So he gives this like almost like six options, like on a gradual degree of like bhakti consciousness, right? Like how strict you can be. So even Krishna in chapter 12 is talking about the gradual spectrum of bhakti, right? Right from absorbing in me, right, to all the way to like, okay, do something, and if you can offer fruit to me, that's fine, but offer to some good cause, right? So Krishna talks about that spectrum. So sometimes we have tendency of trying to group devotees in boundaries 0 and 1. I think that's like harmful for our spiritual life. We should not do that. And we should see what Krishna mentions in Bhagavad Gita chapter 12. The other thing is like, which I did that when I was neophyte, is like kind of alienating people, right? By being full of ourselves, or by being like, by don't not having the knowledge, proper knowledge. And actually, there is a verse in chapter 3, text 26, where Krishna says that, I'm going to read the translation, when Krishna says that, let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruitive action. They should not be encouraged to refrain from work, but to engage in work in the spirit of devotion, right? So this is what Krishna says. Krishna is very clear, like you don't have to break people's faith. You don't have to tell them that they are doing something wrong, right? You just have to align them. That's what Prabhupada did. Just dovetail them into Krishna's service. Um, and non-devotees have a lot of qualities. Sometimes devotees may not have a lot of qualities, but non-devotees have a lot of qualities. And we should not assume that devotees have all the good qualities and non-devotees don't have good qualities. Well, in the ultimate sense, once the devotee becomes come to the stage of like Krishna prema, he will have all the good qualities in full. There's no doubt about that. But in the journey, you may see that a lot of devotees have not a lot of good qualities, versus like the non-devotees may have good qualities. So we should not stereotype people, right? That's the lesson from this. Like, don't stereotype devotees and non-devotees. Think of people as people are good or bad, right? But not like, okay, all devotees are good and all no devotees are bad. That's not a good way of looking at the world, and that will not enrich your life. It will not like make you a better person. And I went through that phase, and I would just see like devotees means like amazing qualities, and non-devotees means not good qualities, and I offended a lot of people in that process. So that's my personal realization. We should respect everyone, and be equal to everyone. um there's also like, and then and there's this whole aspect of, so why is like application of spirituality so important, right? Because there's knowledge of matter, and there's knowledge what matters, right? So there's two aspects. So the spiritual text focuses on knowledge that matters, right? Not knowledge of matter, which is basically mostly on the material side of things, right? So what happens is that too much knowledge of matters can burden our brain and cause stress, and we all understand that word very well, because in the modern lifestyles we all are under stress. Our brains are under constant stress. If we are a student, we are under stress. We are working, we are under stress, because we have so much knowledge of the matter, right? We have to free up the brain through what matters most, through the knowledge of what matters most, right? So that's why, we need to find spiritual solutions to the material problems, because that's the real solution for us to, solve them. Excuse me. Example is like of a knife, right? So you can keep on using a knife and it become blunt, and you keep on using it. It's not very efficient, but you still keep on using it. But or you can just take a break, take some time out, and sharpen the knife, and then you can start using it, and it's very effective, right? So don't think of spiritual practices or chanting or something else like a drag to your time, right? It's like sharpening your life. So even you are giving like 1 hour in a day to sharpen the knife, but that rest of the time you actually more efficient because you have sharpened the knife. It's not dull anymore. So having that positive attitude towards spiritual practices helps you to kind of adjust your life, and be positive about what you're doing, and don't think of as like a time wastage or whatever, right? So we talked about like knowledge, right? So there's also like then Gita talks about like three modes, 3+1. So three modes it talks about is basically ignorance, mode of passion, mode of goodness, and the fourth mode is the transcendental mode, right? So the basis of these modes are actually a consciousness. So you can have a consciousness in mode of ignorance, or mode of passion, or mode of goodness. And these modes are very important, especially when it comes to a spiritual life, because the way we see the world, we see through this mode. So these modes are like our prism to see the world, right? So if you have a yellow glass, then you see the world as yellow, right? If you have green glass, you see the world as green. So if you're in mode of ignorance, you will see the world as in ignorance mode, right? And a simple example would be, right, like any when we perceive anything, right, when we think of anything, there are two outcomes of that. Either that makes us distressed or it makes us happy, right? But sometimes what happens, like the same thing or same event can make one person happy and one person distressed. So what does that mean? That means that those two people, they're looking at the same event, but they are getting different levels of happiness and distress. Why? Because they are in a different frame of mind, or they are in different mode, right? So a person who's in mode of passion will have a certain reaction which will be different than a reaction of a mode of ignorance person. All the event may be same. A simple example could be like I love, say, gulab jamun, right? I go to a program and I know like there will be a gulab jamun there at the end of the meal. So I'm sitting there, I'm waiting for it, and then at the end, like I find out that there's no gulab jamun, because the host couldn't make it or whatever, right? But I feel like so upset, right? Because I was looking for gulab jamun, I've been waiting for gulab jamun, but I didn't get it. So I'm so unhappy, right? But the same event, this person sitting next to me, for example, he has diabetes. And that person is like, he has been thinking all evening that, oh God, I wish there was no gulab jamun, because if there was a gulab jamun, then I'll have to eat it and then it will affect my diabetes, right? So that person is seeing it in a different way. So the same event, when it happens, like I'm unhappy because I was deprived of the gulab jamun. This person is super happy because he actually didn't want the gulab jamun, so it kind of helped him like not have a gulab jamun. So he's happy, right? So the same event is causing two different reactions, opposite reactions, right? This is how the modes work, right? Like we see the world through those modes. So that's why it's important to elevate the mode. So if you want to be effective in the world, if you want to be happy in the world, if you want to actually like live a full life, a purposeful life, we have to start like looking at those modes. And those modes actually are not like what we think they are. They are not like that. These modes permeate all of us, right? It's not that they always will be like I will be always in a certain mode. It's not like that. I may go through all the modes in a day, right? So there's always choice for us to kind of control the mode. So mode of ignorance is basically someone who's disconnected from the world. That's like a crazy person, right? A mode of passion could be like someone who's like trying to be happier than everyone else. Like he's super busy, he's trying to achieve things, he's trying to get the next promotion, he's trying to like be the topper in the class. Both cases, like although one is ignorance and one is passion, one is crazy and one is busy, but they both exhausting to the mind, right? And because it just there's no break for the mind, and that's what we see around. Most of the world we see right now is either in the crazy mode or the busy mode. And that's why if you think about that, which is the most expensive business in the world, right? Or which are the people who are getting most paid? Actually, those people who are getting most paid are not the bankers or technology people or doctors. They are the people who are in entertainment business, like your entertainment through, like, movies, entertainment through sports. These people make millions. Why? Have you ever thought about that? Why these people are making so much money? Because they are in the business of entertainment, and that's one business which everyone needs, because they're so crazy and so busy. Because through entertainment only they can stay sane, right? It's like an escapist kind of in a mentality, but that's how it is, right? It is what, this is that's where the entertainment is a big business. We pay big bucks to those people who are in the entertainment business. um and and we talk about growth, right? So when we are in mode of passion, we are like growing, we are growing very fast, we are doing such an awesome thing. But the thing with growth is that it has to be balanced for it to give you happiness. If it's unbalanced growth, it's not good. An example is like cancer. Cancer is growth, but it's unbalanced. Your cells are growing unbalanced fashion, and it's not good at all. So same thing in if you are in mode of passion, you are going like crazy, and you're kind of going, busy, and you are doing so many good things. You're getting promotion, making so much money. You're growing, but if it's not balanced with other aspect of your life, that's the same like cancer. Because it is unbalanced growth. Even though you are making more and more money, and you are getting all the corporate ladder up and down, but because other aspects are suffering, and it's not a balanced growth, it creates like decay, it creates hollowness. So that's something which, you have to keep in mind, that growth is not always good. It is good when it's a balanced growth, but when it's unbalanced growth, it's not good. And that's what brings us to mode of goodness. Now when you're in the mode of goodness, there's a purpose behind what you do, right? There should be purpose behind what you do. And that's called meaningful happiness. And when you have a meaningful happiness, it comes from a balanced growth. Right? So it's not that all happiness are the same, right? For example, like, I would love to watch a comedy, and I will be happy, but can I watch it for like hours and hours on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, on a yearly basis? No. I need something meaningful to engage, right? I want a meaningful happiness, which can give me balanced growth. So we have to strive for that meaningful happiness. um, and and what and that brings us to the question, what exactly makes it meaningful, right? There are two things which makes it meaningful. One is a connection, and one is your contribution. So you connect to something which is important for you, and then you contribute to that, right? And you can use these two definitions in both material realm and spiritual realm. So a material example would be like somebody, like, helping orphans, right? Or providing food to the poor, right? So they connect. The first aspect is connecting to those people who need you, and then contributing in their goodness, right? So that gives you meaningful happiness. And those people are mode of goodness, and they're happy because they have purpose in their life. And you can take those mode of goodness people and kind of put into transcendence, and just dovetail and say, okay, now connection, give it to Krishna. And when you are in the contribution, do the service. So now you take the connection and the contribution, and you kind of connect with Krishna, and then become the transcendental mode now, right? So this is how you can kind of come out of that goodness mode to transcendental mode, and then it's even better that way, right? um, so that's what we talk about, like the ABC, right? Association, association, book distribution, chanting, because those three things help you to contribute and make your life meaningful. So to summarize, like the modes, like the modes are like waves, right? So when you are in the ocean and you have to face a lot of waves, you can either try to fight them out, which will drain your energy and you will get tired, or you can hold to an anchor, right? And with the same force. But if you do the later, if you hold to an anchor with the same force instead of fighting the waves, you can survive much longer and you won't be tired. So we have to find that anchor, like that anchor. For some it could be Krishna, for others it could be someone else, but that anchor is important. So when you are fighting those waves of the life, you have that anchor to kind of attach to or cling to, and that just makes, like, those waves go away pretty fast, and makes things easy. The other aspect is free will. I know people kind of get, like, very confused with the free will and the modes. And the question is asked, like, okay, if there is, if the karma is already there, then do we even have a free will, right? do we have like free will of the modes? Well, the answer is yes. I mean, at every point we have those option to choose the mode, either ignorance or passion or goodness. Think of this mode as like multiple choice questions, right? So when you're sitting exam and you are given multiple choice questions, those are the mode, but you still have the free will to choose them. At every stage you have free will to choose what mode you want to choose, right? So basically nobody dictates like that selection to you. You have free will to do that. So always remember that even the modes are there, we have free will to look at those modes and choose them. Now, the past karma has also an angle with the free will, right? So the past karma does play in. The past karma will decide what we do in life, but there's also a free will within the past karma domain. So for example, if I have to go from here to New Jersey, or like say New York City, if I sit on a bus, like it will take me to New York City. That's given, right? That's fixed. That's what karma is like. It has already decided that I'm going to New York City, and that's fixed. But within that bus, how I interact with people around me, or how do I make some choices, how do I take the journey with me, is free will of mine, right? That's totally up to me. So past karma gives us the guide rails, or like a in a world of paintings, like it gives a canvas, like a specific canvas, like a certain size canvas to us. But how do we paint that canvas with the colors of life? It's up to us. That's our free will. So past karma is reality, and free will is also reality. Past karma does not control your free will. Past karma just provides you a canvas, a limited canvas, uh, or unlimited to an extent, depending on how much karma you have, but it's still like constraints by certain time space circumstances. And then you can put your free will, painted with the free will color. Um, so I think we are getting close to the thing, but I will quickly wrap it up. So call to action, right? What are some of the tips like you want to I would like to you guys to take away from this conversation, is that basically just be honest to yourself, right? Find your calling. Everyone has a quality in them which they can use for Krishna service, or doing good to the world, right? So find that quality of yours, and just like focus on that. There's also the other aspect is that there are different people who are engaging in different services, right? In some people are doing books distribution, for them that's important. Some people are doing deity service, that's important. Some people are want to make a big temple, that's important for them. Some people just wants to like do like extra japa around, that's important for them. Everyone is doing what they think will please Krishna, and they all are right. So we may not have to agree with them, but we should respect the services they do, right? That's the thing. Then there's speculation, right? We are told in bhakti that don't speculate, but there is the speculation is not a single term. There are two kinds of speculation. There's mental speculation and there's philosophical speculation. So mental speculation means that I am disagreeing with the principles of bhakti, right? And also I am disagreeing with the journey of bhakti, right? That's mental speculation. The philosophical speculation is like I'm agreeing that Krishna is supreme. I'm agreeing with the principles of bhakti, but my journey to reach those principles will be my own. It will not be somebody else's copy and paste. It will be my own. I will own it. There will be different deviation. There will be some distractions, but the goal is same, right? So that's philosophical speculation. And Prabhupada always encouraged philosophical speculation. He didn't encourage mental speculation because that takes us away from Krishna, but he encouraged philosophical speculation. And we, as a disciple and followers, should find our calling within that philosophy of speculation. We should be ready and open to speculate of how do we reach that goal, what path should I take, what detour should I take, like that's up to us. Nobody can own our journey, nobody can own our like process, like that's totally our own. We have to develop that process. Then the other thing is like chanting and mind control, right? Like chanting is most important aspect of bhakti yoga. The confusion becomes that like chanting helps in mind control, but at the same time you need mind control to do chanting. So it becomes like a catch-22 situation, because if you're not attentive to chanting, you can't really chant properly, right? So it becomes like, should chanting give me mind control, or should I have mind control to do chanting? Actually, answer is that both. because the mind control is spectrum. So you need some mind control to do chanting, but chanting will improve mind control. And don't think of chanting as just 1 hour 2 hour process. Chanting actually, the execution is 2 hour process of chanting, but the preparation is just 22 hours. So if your 22 hours in a day are not very peaceful, they are not purposeful, as I mentioned, they're not purposeful, they are not mindful, then those 2 hours when you execute the chanting will not be great. So make sure that you have those 22 hours of purposeful life and purposeful happiness and meaningful work you do. Then that will make your 2 hours, very, very productive. There's a book called Atomic Habits. Like, I will encourage everyone to read it. It talks about like how do we create habits, and you can use that book for creating like material habits or spiritual habits. I will just say one thing from the book. Generally when we try to achieve a goal, we focus on the goal. If I want to be the best runner in the world, I will that's my goal, and I will try to hit that goal. But actually, that's not the right way. The right way is to develop a system to achieve that goal. And the book, what the book says is that you don't rise to your goals, but you fall to your systems, right? So the system is your baseline. So if your systems are solid and your processes are good, then you will achieve any goal and every goal you want to have in life. If you focus on goal only and you don't have a system, you don't have a habit, then you will always keep on failing. So don't focus on the goal, focus on the system, develop a system, and that will help you attain the goal. So with this, I will stop. It's 9:55, and sorry I had to rush the last few slides, but I don't want to make everyone sleep past 10 o'clock. So here we are. I will skip this. I wanted to talk about this, but I don't have time. But if any questions or comments, I will take it. And thanks for being here.
Wow, that was a power-packed session. Thank you so much, Shri Gadadhar Prabhu. It was mind-blowing. I just want to briefly talk about a few things that you mentioned. You talked about flexibility, about how Srila Prabhupada told that person that Vaikuntha is an ocean of LSD. And then you talked about austerity is not to take unnecessary suffering on the body, but to grow spiritually. I really like that quote very much. And how Bhakti Tirtha Swami was also very, very flexible, just like our Srila Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing on the other extreme you mentioned was the practicality does not mean bending of principles. You gave the example of eating meat. And then you talked about fidelity versus flexibility. Srila Prabhupada's life membership idea was very flexible, and he accommodated a lot of people to join our movement through that life membership program. And another thing that I liked was don't bucket devotees as good or bad, like 0 and 1. It's a spectrum and not a binary logic. And the knowledge of matter and what really matters, allowed that point. 3 modes, you gave the example of gulab jamun. Different people view different things in different ways. That was also wonderful. And growth has to be balanced to be happy. I really like that example of cancer. Like if it is not balanced, then you will not be happy. And finally, he talked about connecting and contributing. And then the past karma actually gives us the canvas. So thank you so much. Wonderful, wonderful points. So I'll open it up for questions, comments. Anybody? Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Gadadhar Prabhu. Thank you so much for that wonderful insight. I'm a little older than some of the other people here, but I still think your points were very, very apt. No matter what age anybody is in their path on bhakti, they're all great, great things to keep in mind. And I'm going to come back to this tomorrow when it's posted. I really enjoyed the comparison of spirituality and the practice of bhakti is to a knife, then sharpening that knife so that when we are trying to cut through this material world and get to the spiritual world, our tool is there ready for us. And I thought it was especially nice coming after the previous point of respecting devotees and non-devotees, and how our spirituality can be like a knife, and that it can cause pain to people if we are too quick to judge or too quick to act. So this comes on the heels of a conversation my wife and I were having earlier today about 2 other devotees who were discussing things that made me very upset and angry. And so it's nice to see that Krishna always provides a lens to look at a situation that has transpired before, and to listen to a learned devotee and learn from them. So I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Anyone else? So Athena Mataji has a comment. Thank you so much for a wonderful session. Gaurakumar Prabhu covered a lot of my favorite points. I really liked all your practical examples and perspectives. Thank you so much. So nice to hear from you on this forum. Hare Krishna.
Thanks, Athena Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Sorry, I cannot have my video on because I'm in the bed with Radha Kripa.
Okay, no problem.
But I really enjoyed every single aspect, and in Gaurakumar Prabhu covered a lot of it. But my personal takeaway is with the chanting. You mentioned that it's 2 hours of chanting, but it's 22 hours of preparation and reflecting, and so that it when we chant the next day, it's going to whether it's fruitful or not depends on the remaining preparation time. So it was really nice point, and I love the point about the fidelity and the flexibility aspect as well, that how it needs to be in balance for any religion or dharma to be longing last, last longing. And yeah, definitely a wonderful lecture. Thank you so much for sharing this all these nuggets of spirituality with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for the encouragement.
Anybody has any tough questions? Vishal Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for coming and enlightening us today. I really loved lots of points, whatever you spoke. I have a question, Prabhuji. So you spoke about flexibility, and you gave the examples of Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Tirtha Swami Maharaj and even Chaitanya Chandru. So how they exemplify the point of flexibility. I wanted to ask that like all these devotees, they are very like strict with their own sadhana, very strict with themselves. So how like how to understand that, because in the name of flexibility, there could be like compromise with our own personal sadhana as well. Like we can be flexible, and we should be flexible so we can reduce our chanting, or not be like sincere, and so like that. So can you like shed some light on that?
Sure. That's a great question. So first of all, we have to understand that bhakti is a very personal process, right? Prabhupada has this like very famous comment. He said like we all have to fly our own planes. So what Chaitanya Prabhu does, what Prabhupada did, right? Like we all know that. So we all have the knowledge of the absolute truth. We all have the knowledge of the ultimate goal. We all know that, right? Now, but reaching that goal is not like overnight process. Right? It could be a multi-year process, multi-birth process, right? So we decide what we can do, when we can do, how we can do, right? And when you are new to the process, you may make mistakes. You may not be so strict. Like when I was like 20 years ago, like, I was, doing certain things which took time for me to leave, when I came to Bhakti, right? So what happened, like, initially you're more flexible, then your flexibility reduces. But at any given point in time, you still have the option of being flexible. Now, it may impact your spirituality, it may not impact spirituality. That's up to you to decide, like, because you own your journey towards Krishna, nobody else owns it, right? So you are the only judge for that. Nobody can judge, like, the choices you make. But one thing you should keep in mind is that you should never go back. That's what my guiding principle is, that if I have done something, I have achieved something, if, say, for example, like, for lack of a good example, let's say, suppose, I gave up like eating meat, or I gave up eating egg, right, at some point. So I will just like cap it off like that. For me, the flexibility doesn't mean that I will go back on that, right? That's given. I may have other thing which I will try to be flexible in, but I will not try to go back or slide back, right? But there are people who do slide back, right? Because maybe Krishna just is not going to get them, in this life. Maybe it will take the other life to them, right? So coming back to your point, that you can only decide in on your own knowledge and what you have with you, like what is best for your sadhana. I will stop here. Like, does it make sense, or did I just ramble along all over the
Yeah,
place?
it's probably so. Like if you mentioned like if you cannot go back, so
You should not go
won't
back. You can always
won't,
go back, right?
won't
Like,
it make
mm,
make us proud?
yeah. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What's the question again? Like,
Yeah, my question is like if we like think like we are not going back and
mm,
we are also not going ahead and we are staying there.
mm.
So doesn't that thought make us proud that at least we are not going back, so we are doing well, and that diverts us from going ahead?
So again, like it's you always have to like. So the goal is always to progress, right? That's given, right? But depending on your circumstance of your life, you may not be able to reach that goal or not be able to do that, right? So you can take as many breaks you want to take. It's up to you. What is practical spirituality? Practical spirituality means that you always decide at a given point in time what is best for you in on your spiritual life, right? Based on the circumstance. Coming back to your question about it should make you proud. I mean, maybe it will make other people proud, but I don't think everyone will be proud of something like that. That yeah, they are not going down, but they are still staying in the same place. I mean, I don't really understand the premise behind that thing. That why would it make you proud? Maybe some people may get proud, but my question would be like, what if that happens? Like, what will that lead to? Right? I mean, I'm not able to like understand that point. Like, so if somebody is proud of that, like, so what? Right? I mean, there it's there for them. It's for them to, again, this is their personal journey. They can feel whatever they want to feel about it, right? We have the right principles, we have the right knowledge. How do you apply this to you now, right? We should not be proud of anything, but sometimes, like, you can be proud of things which can motivate you, right? You can be proud of some things which can really push you to the next level, which is fine, right? Like, I mean, even Arjun was proud of his prowess, right? Till when Krishna left the planet, then he realized that, wow, I have no energy. Like, everything was from Krishna, and then he lost, like, to all those coward boys, right? So I mean, everyone is proud at some point, right? And I think we should not get lost in the weeds there, right? The goal is like basically to just keep on progressing, and when you keep on progressing, those things will be taken care of on its own. So what happens, like, when you are trying to focus on the weeds, you miss the fruits and the positive plants around it, right? You're too focused on the weeds, right? But when you are putting right manure and fertilizer to your garden, then you will see more flowers than the weeds. So there's more positivity around that, right? So that's what it is, right? So if you just focus on the weeds, you end up ignoring the plants and the flowers and the vegetables, because your all energy go on the weeds. And then what happens? You may or may not be able to take care of the weeds, but absolutely you have no plants out there which can feed you or give you flowers, right? So focus on the flowers, focus on the positive aspects of life, which are your strength. Just keep on focusing on that. The negative will take care of this on their own, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
Gaurav, you want to add something?
No, I think that was perfect. I think one thing that I want to add is that sometimes when we give up something, we kind of tend to think of it as austerity. Like if I give up eating eggs or something, whatever, then I try to think, oh, it's I'm becoming more austere, and that can make you a little proud, saying that I've given this. But again, your point about it's not about the bodily suffering, but if our austerity is done with the goal of spiritual upliftment, then I don't think you will get proud. And also, one thing that can shield you from pride is the association of devotees, especially the peers. If you're getting proud, you will get purified by your peers. I think that's very, very important to be in the association. You'll get shielded. Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments, questions?
Hey, Krishna Prabhuji, thank you for the amazing class. I don't have a question now, but I really liked the binary and analog thing you said, like the spectrum part, because that's what we love about Chetna Chan Prabhuji's classes also, and you just re-emphasize that everything, whether it's someone's qualities or just our own sadhana, just keeping it more like thinking of it as a spectrum. So I think that's something I'll take away. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, I mean, he's my favorite, speaker, Peter, and a lot of my ideas that come from him. So I will give all the credit to his classes because I get inspired by his classes. I try to copy it or imitate him, but obviously I cannot. But even if I can get a fraction of his message to people around me, I will be successful. Like, he's definitely some amazing person and some knowledge he has. Yeah. So I'm glad you guys listened to him, because yeah, you'll get a lot of benefit out of that.
Thank you. So I just want to read out a couple of comments from the chat. So Shreya is mentioning that thank you. Really liked how you explained religion to be the means for spirituality. Love the explanation for free will on the background of past karma and all the examples that you covered. And Aditya also says, Aditya has a question. I would
Sure.
love to hear Prabhu's early years of devotion. What inspired him to take the path of bhakti and chanting?
I think
I can
Gaurakumar
I can answer that one.
Gaurakumar can start that, and then I can fill up in.
Samosa and gulab jamun.
Offered. Prasad, samosa and gulab jamun.
So yeah, I will answer the question, and a lot of people can put their color too. So I was introduced to bhakti when I was in college in Albany, when I was doing my MBA. So I think I was in the final year, or maybe I started working. I think I was in final year. So you know, you would all know, right? Like back then, like when you're a student, right, the food is so important, right? I would eat like bread and peanut butter jello sandwich like every day, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, right? So somebody told me that, hey, there's this Gita classes going on here, and I'm like, Gita classes, okay, why should I go there? Then they're like, oh, they have free prasad. I'm like, what? And they're like, they have like this, like, you know, 4-course meal. They give you snacks, they give you appetizers, they give you like, you know, rice, roti, chapati, 3 sabjis, gulab. I'm like, whoa, and it's all free. I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah, sign me up for that, right? So I was like, okay, great. So I would, like, do my normal thing outside, like, the bhakti world. I will come, eat, and go. So I would just do that for like, like every time, right? For like 5 or 6 months, I kept on doing that. And I didn't realize that prasadam, as they say, has power to change heart. And I honestly, I ignored all the lectures, because that was not my goal anyways, right? My goal was to eat, not to listen, right? So I would just ignore lectures. I would ignore, like, that we should be this, we should give up this, we should give up that. I was like, oh, whatever, right? And then slowly, like the prasadam just started doing its magic from inside. And I think 6 months, 8 months, 10 months, at some point, I was like, okay, I should give up this, I should give up that. I just don't feel like doing it anymore. I just like, hanging out with devotees, discussing, asking questions, getting answers, and all the kind of stuff. So that was my journey. This is how it started, and then, it just slowly became like more serious. Then I met my wife. Back then she was also like, a student. She did a pharmacy from Albany. So she would come there for the classes. And I mean, people claim that I came for her, but actually it's not true. I came for Prashad. But people say that I was coming just for her, but which is not true. Maybe there was some aspect to it, but I was primarily coming for Prashadam there. And then I guess, like, Krishna gave me Prashad, and Krishna gave me my future wife also at the same time. So here I am talking to you guys. So that's nutshell. Gorkma, you want to add something?
No, that was perfect. Thank you.
If you want to hear the stories, like, offline, on a non-public forum, then you can always talk to Gorkma. He can tell you a lot of stories which I can't share on the public forum right now.
Okay, thank you. So we also have a couple of our friends, Sri Gadadhar's friends, Jeet Advani, Jitendra Prabhu, and Darshan Prabhu. Jitendra Prabhu, you want to say something? You're muted, Prabhu. You're muted.
Thank you very much, Gaur Kumar Prabhu. Thank you, Sri Gadadhar Prabhu, for the class. I thought the topic is going to be on the vaccine, but seems like you guys tricked me with this. I was totally here for the discussion on vaccine, but
We'll have a special class for that.
spirituality and practicality. That was too much heavy dose.
You will have a special class for the vaccine people, but right now,
No. Thank you. I mean, I liked that. Yeah, there is a need of flexibility, but there is indeed certain things and your primary principles that you cannot be flexible with. That's so important. And especially in the time of pandemic, you're totally alone by yourself. And this is the time when you're actually tested with your own self, because you are the person exactly when you're alone. So it is a good time for everybody to introspect and see, uh, test yourselves, and limit to your flexibility. Flex your muscles, you know.
Yeah, that's important too. You need to get the workout going, right?
Yeah, totally, totally.
Thank you, Jitendra Prabhu. The other Jitendra Prabhu also wants to speak, so I'll let the other Jitendra Prabhu speak.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Wonderful class.
You're welcome.
I just feel that such classes, if I would have heard in my initial days, it would have saved a lot of alienation of other people, like my family members especially, because in the initial days, we like I myself, I have I went into a holier than thou attitude, right? Looking down upon, as you very rightly gave examples of, looking down upon materialism and and not being sensitive to the needs of others and things like that, and that resulted in alienation of some of my family members who kind of, so the way they see bhakti is through us, and
Yeah.
if we portray this kind of an image of bhakti, then it kind of clouds their own definition of bhakti, so that becomes a hindrance for them to take up. So in that sense, this class was very nice. I loved it. And just one thing I'd like to mention, based on the example of that you mentioned about Srila Prabhupada answering that hippie what Vaikuntha is like. If you were to ask Srila Prabhupada what Vaikuntha is like, then perhaps he would have said a world full of samosas and chutney.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have, because he knew, like, he knew everyone's propensities, and he would have known my propensity. He would have said Vaikuntha is like the gulab jamun dipped in nectar, something on those lines, like an ocean of gulab jamun and nectar, right? Like something of those lines. But yeah, no, seriously, like, jokes apart, but Srila Prabhupada is exemplary in so many ways. And I think what we don't realize, that the flexibility and the practicality he brought into Krishna consciousness is something which we can't even fathom, right? Like, because if he didn't do that, like, I don't think we would have, like, accepted the step path, right?
Definitely. Yep.
Because while we were growing up, all, like, in mainstream Hindu families, like, we were not given, like, answers to a lot of questions, or we were given answers which were very rigid, right, without any explanation. He could explain things very nicely, and through his disciples, to disciple with disciple, through his books. So yeah, his contribution is just immense. Without him, like, none of us would have been here spending like an hour talking about this. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. That's a really good point. And again, the holiday altitude is very widespread, Prabhu. You're not the only one. I was part of that, and I know personally people who all are part of that, because it just, I don't know, maybe it's a natural state of growing up. It's just like, when you are really strict and hardcore, you are just trying to maybe protect yourself, because you are weak inside, so you have to be like strong outside, or at least give the perception of being strong. That's a defensive mechanism. Once you become more confident about your faith, once you are more mature, then you don't need that external, like, machism, or like, the strictness. So I think it's just a natural process, in my opinion. But yeah, it's not fun to alienate your loved ones and your family, and I have done that. So yeah, it's a great point, Prabhu. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, this is called cloud nine syndrome. You're on cloud nine, everybody is below you.
Yeah, and that's not good for anything. And I'm glad we all are talking about these points, because when I was trying to create this content for this lecture, like, I was trying to focus on only one aspect. How do we take the knowledge we have, the spiritual knowledge, and kind of make our life better, right? Because if the knowledge is just not applied to our lives and not making it better, then what's the point of the knowledge, right? Then it becomes like that relic of the past, right? Like, it's just no use of that, right? So the point of the whole class was that we can somehow find way to use the knowledge to enrich our life, to enrich other people's life, to enrich the world, our family, our job, everything, because Krishna has given such an amazing, knowledge to us that we can use it in every aspect of life. It's just not that we have to be sitting in the Himalayas and just like, meditating 24/7. We can be normal grasta, normal student, a normal person, and still imbibe those qualities with us. So I'm so happy that every one of you are actually raising those points and saying that you like this, because for me as someone who is presenting the content, like, it's just very satisfying that I was able to provide you with some information and take away points, which you could use, practically in your life. So thanks for the encouragement, every one of you.
Okay. Also, there are some comments coming in. Anirudh Prabhu mentioned that he liked your class, and he especially liked Bhakti is like sharpening a knife, and the part about fidelity and flexibility. He loved the practical examples and the part where you mentioned that spirituality is non-binary and is a spectrum. So thank you so much, Prabhu. And then Athena Mataji just said that for the last point that you made, yes, I agree. The fanaticism, strictness, and inflexibility with others is a symptom of feeling insecure. Wonderful point. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think everybody has commented. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you, Sri Gadadhar Prabhu. Amazing, amazing class. I was very, very impressed. I mean, it's very, very, like, so many nuggets of wisdom. So thank you so much. We'll definitely have you here again very soon. Thank you. Thank you so much. And then for the rest of you, I just want to mention that we are going on this Rajdam Yatra this weekend. So for those of you who are not joining us, we seek your blessings and prayers that the Yatra goes smoothly. And we will keep you in our minds. And next week is Narsingha Chaturthi. So next Wednesday, I'll speak a little bit about Lord Narsinghadev. After that, we will have Madan Gopal Prabhu again here. And then we will have future speakers are yet to be decided. Shamanand Prabhu is scheduled. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu will be speaking again soon. So thank you all so much again. And Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Sri Gadadhar Prabhu ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Bye.
So we stop.